I stumbled upon Socratic seminars and they've totally transformed my teaching. They've helped me build classroom community. I've built lasting relationships with my students, and most importantly, really seen an increase in their target language output, which is the goal. At the end of the day, we would love for our students to walk away and be able to use real Spanish. So that's what I love about them. So I'm gonna, like I said, share a little bit about a lot with you. So I'm gonna try to get through as much as I can so you get a good feel. So what is a Socratic seminar? It's a student-led discussion based on a prompt. That's a very watered down definition. You can Google, you can read tons of academic articles about them. They're very common in English classes, in social studies classes. I know my students have mentioned to me that they've done them there. And it's something that we can use too. Why not? Why can't we use them? We just have to adapt them, modify them a little bit for our students because they're language learners. So what does it look like? If you were to walk into my classroom when we were doing a Socratic seminar, what it looks like is my students are sitting in a circle with me. We're all kind of eye level, all looking at each other, and we're engaging in authentic and spontaneous conversation. So we have some type of prompt. Sometimes it's discussion questions that I've given them. Sometimes it's an article. Sometimes it's a video. They have to look at this outside of class on their own time and put in their own preparation. And then they come in and we talk about it. And it's very student driven. It's driven by their interest. It's driven by their questions. And it's great for community building. It's great for fostering output, like I mentioned. This is probably the best tool I've used to get to know my students in the last few years. And this year, with all the craziness, my school is hybrid. So Monday through Thursday, I go in every day, but only half of my students come in person. So really, they're only seeing me face to face 2 times a week. And then Friday, we're fully virtual. So I have cohort 1 comes in Monday, Wednesday, cohort 2 comes in Tuesday, Thursday, and then we're all together on Friday. And then on top of that, I even have some fully remote students that I've never even met in person. So we're all together. It's a bunch of us. And I was really worried about the community in my classroom this year. And I have to tell you, it's actually been great. I've really been getting to know my students through activities like this. We've done quite a few Socratic seminars, and the hybrid is actually working in my favor because it's smaller groups with me. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I want you to just get a feel for what it looks like, because I can't tell you how many PDs I sat through about Socratic seminars. And I was like, could somebody just tell me what it is? I don't understand. What is it? But basically you have a prompt and your students will look at that. They'll come up with questions. They'll come up with ideas, and then they will discuss it together. So why do I need this? In a time when we've been given so many things to do, so many digital platforms, so many virtual things. I can't tell you how many accounts I've made in the last 5 months on all of the things, like trying a little bit of everything to see what works. This is something that you're going to invest your time in, and you're going to see the return, and you'll use it hopefully for the rest of your career. It is a staple in my classes. It's something I believe in, and I've seen such great success with my students. I just want to share with everyone because I think it's so great. Again, builds that classroom community. You're going to foster spontaneous and authentic conversation. So I know a lot of us are moving away from the traditional language teaching, and we're moving towards proficiency. We're moving towards authenticity. This is exactly the perfect tool to do that, because your students can prep and think about ideas beforehand, but they're not going to be able to guess what their classmates are going to say or what I'm going to say. So eventually they're going to have a spontaneous and authentic conversation. It's a great place for them to learn expressions like, wow, that's cool, or I agree, or I disagree. All those words and phrases that sometimes we struggle to fit into a traditional curriculum. This is real language, and they're using and producing real language. It is student-centered. I know when I first started teaching, I'm a little type A, and control, you want that control, you want everything to go a certain way. And I was nervous to let go of the reins. And this is that you're letting go of the reins and you're letting them take control. And my principal said to me, he loved that my students were in control of this conversation. It was driven by their interest, and he could tell because they were invested. They came to the class, they were invested in the conversation, they shared things, they were supportive of one another. And this is probably one of the best things. It's low prep for you, which is great. And I always use the article as an example, because how many times as language teachers do we find articles that are good? Oh, this is perfect for the topic I'm teaching. And then you have to spend another 30 minutes to an hour working it up with questions or rewriting it because it's not in that comprehensible language. And then you do all that work, you give it to your students, it works great for that year. Then maybe you can get another year out of it. And then after that, it's irrelevant. So all of that work that you did is kind of gone. With a Socratic Seminar, you can find an article and you don't have to do anything with it because your students are going to read it and annotate it, and they're going to prep for a conversation. So it can be relevant, it can be real what's happening in the world right now, which is great. So what I hope for you to get out of tonight, this little boot camp, is first, understand Socratic seminars, what they are, how they can work in your classroom. Then I would love for you to walk away tonight with a mini Socratic seminar outlined that you can actually turn around and use in your classes. I feel like there's nothing better than going to a PD and getting something out of it where you actually leave with an activity that you can turn around and use. So that's my goal. I know we've only got 30 minutes, so it's a lofty goal. So you might leave with a little homework, but it'll be worth it. And then really understand how to execute this. The most common thing that I hear is people give up on Socratic seminars because they try it and it fails and they say, this isn't for me, I can't do it. So I don't want that to happen. So I want you to understand what it is. Let's work on thinking about what you can do in your classes, and then let's troubleshoot before you even hit the problem. Let me share with you some common pitfalls so you don't have to fight against that. So the prompt is probably the most important thing, because if you have a boring prompt, it's not going to generate conversation. If the prompt is something that's not interesting to students, it's not going to generate that authentic and spontaneous conversation that we want. So you want to pick a prompt that is, most importantly, level appropriate. If you pick an article from a newspaper meant for native speakers for level 2, it's going to be a problem. It's too hard for them. They can't get through it. They feel frustrated. They feel defeated before they even started. They're going to say to you, how can I talk about this when I don't even understand what it's saying, right? So consider the level. Then consider the topic. Like I said, if you can make it something that will pique their interest or make a connection with them, super important. I'm going to suggest that you start with, like, especially for tonight, let's start with having 5 discussion questions. So you're going to want to start with 5 discussion questions that you give to your students. This is not a discussion question where you give them one and then they answer it right away. Then you give them one and then they answer it right away. This is going to be 5 discussion questions that you give to them. What's tomorrow? Let's say Thursday. And then you say, on Monday, we're going to have a class discussion about this. And you're going to allow them to have time to marinate on these questions, to think about it, to prep on their own, to maybe come up with questions of their own, and just get some ideas. I always tell my students, if we're using discussion questions, don't write out paragraph answers for each one, because then what happens? They come in and they read it. And you're going to say, Christina, they just read their answers to the discussion questions. It was not an authentic conversation. So what I'll tell my students is, let's think of ideas. So you're going to want them to list out some ideas for each question. And I encourage them, don't write in full sentences, just write vocab that you could use for this question, or an idea that connects with the question, but try not to lock yourself in. And I explain to them, I say, if you answer this question with your beautiful answer, but then somebody else goes in front of you and says the same exact thing. Now you have nothing to say. If you give yourself options and you bullet out some ideas, now you have possibilities. So if somebody says one thing, you can go on to your next possibility and still be in the conversation. And your other possibilities for prompts. Socratic seminars are super flexible. So discussion questions are the best way to go in the beginning because you want your students to learn how to work through this Socratic seminar. You want them to learn their role. So you don't want to give them an article off the bat or a video, and then because that's a little bit more challenging. Discussion questions are straightforward. Here are the 5 questions that I want you to look at, think about, answer, or come up with follow-up questions too. And then we'll talk about it next week. If you give them an article, there's going to be a lot of confusion. What do I do? Do I underline? Do I circle? What am I supposed to do with this? So I would suggest for you to be successful, start with discussion questions. You can build up to articles, videos, podcasts later on. So if you haven't, I'll share this link in the chat, but I have this, it's like a quick start Socratic seminar guide. So if you haven't had a chance, I'm going to drop the link in the chat, and it's got a great few pages in there. And one of them actually has some question starters for you. So you're going to want to start with that as kind of like a base. Think about your theme. So if you're coming up on the end of a topic, maybe you don't want to try it now, maybe you want to try it next unit. This is something you're going to want to do after your students are a little bit familiar with the ideas or vocabulary, however you start a unit. So let's say your next unit is customs and traditions. You're not going to give them a Socratic seminar on day 2 of the unit, because they don't have enough background knowledge with the vocabulary yet or with the ideas that you want them to know that they can really develop a good conversation. So this is something, a Socratic seminar is something I usually do in the middle or towards the end of my unit because it allows me to circle back and touch on key points and topics that I want to bring up. So think about your topic or theme, and this is kind of where your homework is going to come in. Think about what you're studying now or what you're going to be studying in the future. And then think about a date when you want to give them a Socratic seminar. So I like to think of my week Monday through Friday. Let's say I want to do my Socratic seminar on Thursday. I'm going to give them the prompt on Monday. So you want to build that into your planning. You want to build in that you're going to give the questions on Monday, have the discussion on Thursday. This is not one of those on the fly, you're on the way to class and you're like, ooh, I'm going to do a Socratic seminar today. They need time to prep because we really want them to give developed answers here or come up with their own questions. So they need time to prep. So plan out your timeline. And then this sheet is in the guide that I just shared. So you can use this, and I just put it in here as a reminder. Dates for your Socratic, date to assign is 2 to 3 days before. And here you can put some discussion questions. Other prompts might include an article that you come by, a video, a podcast, something that you don't necessarily have time to work up and make questions for, but you feel like is relevant and you would want to use in your class. Then you're going to want to think about the level that you're teaching. Your questions need to be level appropriate. So I gave you 10 starters here. Depending on your level, you can work with these, you can level them up or you can level them down. People say all the time, can a Socratic seminar be done in a novice class? It can, but they need a lot of support. Your novice students are not going to be able to just magically produce this language. You're going to have to give them the support. So you're going to want to think about that also. Maybe give them a reference sheet. Do you have a word wall in your classroom that you can direct them to look at, or an anchor chart that's going to be hanging somewhere so that when they need expressions like I agree or I disagree or I like this because I dislike this because, where are those for your students so that they can easily access that information? So start with these kinds of questions. So let's go back to my customs and traditions example. A great question would be using number 1, what is the importance of traditions? Why do we have traditions? That's a great question because there's not one answer. There's many answers, and you want many students to be able to answer. So if we start with that question, what's the importance of traditions? Maybe somebody says, traditions are important because they maintain family values or they maintain your identity heritage. And you could say, that's great, interesting. Does anyone have anything to add or ask? And then another student can add on to that. Sometimes I'll jump in and ask a question and say, that's really interesting. Is your heritage important to you? How do you practice traditions in your family? And I try to make it about the student, because then they're buying into what I'm saying. I'm talking to them and I'm talking about them. And a lot of times they're very proud to share those things. So you want to try to find those little things that they love to talk about. And when you do your first Socratic seminar, you're probably going to have to jump in a lot more than you would like to keep the conversation going and model for your students. The next time you do it, you can pull back a little bit. And then the time after that, you can pull back even more. And then eventually, by like the fourth time, it's going to run itself, where your students are going to run it and you're just there to kind of manage, jump in when somebody needs help, or jump in when you want them to add a little bit more. But that's what's really nice about it. It becomes very student-led and they enjoy leading it. So these are some good questions to get you started. So I recommend look at them. If you are not a Spanish teacher, I can, if you can't translate them yourself, I can always send it to you in English. So if you need that, you can just send me either a direct message on Instagram or you can email me and I'm happy to do that for you. These are just some general ideas for pretty much any topic to get you started. And then let's talk about types of questions. So I kind of touched upon this. These are the 3 kinds of questions you're going to want to use. Personal connections. These are great for buy-in. Your students want to talk about themselves. They want to talk about, maybe we'll use my customs and traditions example, an important custom in their family. And you leave it open-ended. And not every student will be comfortable and want to share, and that's okay. But it's a chance for them to share something they know about, so they'll feel comfortable, like they have knowledge of this. They're not reaching to think about like something they don't know and they have to think, do I have this information right? Is this the country they do this in? No, they're going to talk about themselves. Personal connection. Cultural connection is a great one too, where you ask students to connect this with something you've done in class. So let's say we just read Fiesta Fatal. It was all about quinceañeras, right? So have them connect it to quinceañera. What was the importance of that custom or tradition? What do you think about that cultural custom or tradition? And invite them to talk about that. The last one is it's always good to talk about cultural comparisons. So I'll use my quinceañera example. We can always compare them to sweet 16s or debutante balls or anything like that, and ask students to compare them. Again, this is going to give them a lot to talk about. These types of questions don't have one correct answer, so they're great. That's kind of where you want to go with it. So when you're thinking of questions for your classes, this is kind of where what you want to consider. Am I making personal connections? Am I asking them to draw in cultural connections? Am I asking them to compare with the target culture? And then your next step. So you're going to create your list of 5 questions, pick your date for the seminar, assign your questions 2 to 3 days before. So that's what you're going to do from here. Then before the seminar, set a realistic goal. So if you have novice or intermediate low learners, a goal of a 40-minute Socratic seminar for the first time is not a realistic goal. A great goal would be a 15 to 20-minute Socratic seminar, because remember, we want to try to get them using only target language. So if you can walk away with your students producing target language for 20 minutes in an intermediate low class, that's great. So set a realistic goal, baby steps. And then each time you could build up a little bit more, a little bit more. This is super important. Number 2 here, do a practice question together. So let's say your question was, ¿Cuál es la importancia de costumbres? Or whatever your question you decide. What's the importance of customs or traditions? To pick an easy practice question to do together in class, like, What is the most important custom in your or tradition in your family? And probably a student will answer and say, in my family, birthdays are really important. And you're going to say, great, more, give me more. And you're going to show them on the board, this is how I want more. Who do you celebrate birthdays with? Why are they important to you? When do you celebrate them? What's something unique that your family does? Share more with us. I tell them that I'm like the nosy mom, right? I want to know, where are you going? Who are you with? What time will you be home? I've got like the 20 questions. That's me during the Socratic seminar. Give me the information. So you want to train them to do that ahead of time. This is one of those pitfalls that I mentioned. If you just give your students 5 discussion questions and say, prepare, they're going to come in with basic answers. You want to train them to give you more. Train them to give you the why, the because. Then you're going to want to review your expectations with your students. This will depend on your class. Do you want every student to participate once, maybe twice? Do you want them to produce a complex sentence with a because? Do you want them to produce a subjunctive because you're in an IB AP class? What are your expectations for students? Them knowing this will make them more comfortable and show them how to prepare. Put that question on the board and show them, this is how you bullet out your answers. This is what you should be doing. They need that visual. During the seminar, I mentioned this before, you can jump in for support, but really try not to take over. We don't want it to be teacher-centered. We want it to be you're hosting a dinner party and you're the host. You're there to set everyone up, but you're not going to control the conversation. Okay, jump in for support, allow them to call on one another. This will train them to take control of the conversation. Ask follow-up questions only when necessary. So in the beginning, when I used to do these, I would ask every single kid a follow-up question, but then it's me taking over the conversation again. It's me running the conversation. So to get away from that, only ask those follow-up questions when necessary. So if a student says, traditions are the most important tradition in my family is birthdays, then you maybe say, can you tell us a little bit more about that? And just prompt them to continue talking. And let student interest drive your conversation. So your students are going to buy in when they're interested, when there's topics that are relevant to them. So if you're talking about some things like customs or traditions, you might get pretty off topic. But in my opinion, if I'm off topic, but they're still in the target language, I'm okay with that. They're having authentic conversation. We don't control conversations in real life, right? Like you're not like talking to your friend and you're like, wait, we said we were only going to talk about plans for this weekend. I don't want to hear about what you're cooking for dinner. No, we have authentic conversation. So it's okay if they get off topic. Sometimes that'll invite students who were maybe sitting in the background and not saying anything. They'll be like, oh, this is interesting. And they jump in. So it's okay to let the reins go. Maybe you don't need to hear that, but I was the one that needed to hear that. Like, it's okay, let it go a little bit. And a couple tips for success. So I know what you're thinking, group size of 10 to 15. You're like, Christina, you're insane. My class is not 10 to 15. I know. So I've done this. I've had classes of 29 or 30, and I've tried to do a Socratic seminar with 30 kids at a time. There's too many people, too many cooks in the kitchen. They're all fighting with each other to try to talk, and they're not listening to what the other person is saying because they're just worried about participating. So to battle this, a simple solution is I split them into 2 groups. This year, my school's done it for me. I have a cohort 1 and a cohort 2. So cohort 1 comes in and we have a Socratic seminar. Cohort 2 is at home, so they're working on something independently. The next day they've switched roles. If it was, pre-COVID, my class was 28. I would take a group of 14. We would sit in the circle and have a Socratic seminar. The other 14 are working on something independently, a writing assignment, a reading assignment, something they don't need me for, because you don't want them interrupting you 100 times. Señora, 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 señora. And you're like trying to hear the conversation. Anyone else? Just me, maybe, but that's all the time, right? So something independent that they can do. That's one way to do it. There's a couple of other options. I found that to be the best way because I get to hear from every kid. You want to give them support. And I mentioned this earlier. Design a reference sheet for them. Give them a place to take notes so that when they're speaking in the Socratic Seminar, they have something to look at. They don't feel like they're out to sea without a life jacket. Give them a little life jacket. So if they need to lean on it, they can, and it's there. Sometimes they just need the comfort of it in front of them and they don't even need it. They might use it more in the beginning and eventually let it go once they get comfortable. And just be patient. Allow space for learning. This is new for a lot of us. It's new for a lot of our students. They have to learn about their role in a Socratic seminar. They have to learn your expectations. They have to get comfortable with it. So it will get better every time. Just allow yourself to have that space for growth. So I know that that was a lot of information at once, but like I said, I'm trying to give you as much as I can in a short amount of time. If you need more information, you can always shoot me a DM on Instagram. You can send me an email. I do want to share with you that I've taken pretty much everything that I know and I've put it all together. It's way too much to do in a short PD. So I created this mini course and I call it the Socratic Circle. I just counted and it's just under 2 hours total of instruction. So it's a lot of what I went through tonight in a lot more detail and slowed down with examples. It has 3 modules. I introduce you to the ideas of Socratic seminars. I give you some ideas for prompts. I'll walk you through exactly what you have to do to work with an article, to work with a video, how to do discussion questions. And then I'll also talk about leveling up, how to level it up. So once you do it a couple of times, how do I take it to the next level and grow with my students in their proficiency? And then what I'm really proud of is the resource library that comes with it. There's 9 right now, done for you, ready to print resources. That includes chat mats. So ready to go Socratic seminar mats. You can print them and give them to your students tomorrow. It includes reference sheets. It includes close reading guides. There's a bunch of really great stuff in there. So I do want to share that with you because I'm opening cart for that today and it will be closing on Sunday. So I have your information and you'll see emails about it, but I wanted, since you are here tonight, I wanted to share that opportunity with you because if you decide to buy today, before tomorrow at midnight, I'm going to also throw in a 30-minute group coaching call. So just like this, but you can bring your questions and you could say, my topic is technology. Let's talk about designing a Socratic seminar or something like that. So I'm going to share that link in the chat for you. But if you're interested in learning more, if you really want to kind of take this and run with it and learn quickly, this is everything I know. And I've been doing these for about 10 years. So I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. There's been a lot of trial and error in my classes. So everything I know is in this course. Everything I've learned, I've had wonderful colleagues, is in this course for you. It's pretty much fast paced so that you can watch the 2 hours. If you're like me and you watch things on 2-speed, you'll get it done in a little over an hour, and you'll be ready to go and be successful with your students. So I really want to say thank you so much for being here tonight. I know we're busy. I know we've got a zillion things going on, so I really appreciate your time. But I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I said 30 minutes. I spoke really quickly, so I'm sorry. I hope I didn't scare anyone away. But if you have any quick questions, I'm happy to answer those. If you think of something afterwards, just shoot me a DM on Instagram and I'm happy to answer it there. And that's it, really. I tried to give you my A to Z quickly boot camp there. So I thank you so much for